grade. This week we are starting a new book. We're looking at The Queen of the Falls. And we're going to practice today how to summarize the most important information from a text. Let's read this excerpt from our book. He could then parade Annie across America, visiting lecture halls and theaters where people would pay to see the barrel and hear her tell her story. Both he and Annie could get rich. Frank Russell accepted her offer and set off for Niagara Falls to set the stage for her arrival. Getting newspapers to run stories about Annie was not the only thing her manager needed to do. He also had to hire someone who could put Annie and her barrel in the river above the falls. If Annie would have any chance of surviving her trip, the barrel would have to be placed in the water at exactly the right spot. Fred Truesdale lived in a cottage on the river's bank, not far from the falls, and knew the river as well as any man. He had a sturdy boat and the muscles to row it through the river's swift and deadly currents. He agreed to set the barrel and its passenger in the river. When Annie and her barrel finally arrived in Niagara, Frank Russell made sure there were newspaper reporters at the train station. Because he had stretched the truth a good deal by describing Annie as a 42-year-old adventuress who climbed mountains and swam across frigid lakes, the reporters were expecting a different sort of woman from the one who stepped off the train. Many of them wondered if the promised trip over the falls was just some kind of hoax. The barrel might go over, but would it really carry Annie Taylor inside? She looked old enough to be someone's grandmother and appeared to have spent considerable more time baking pies than climbing mountains. As Annie answered their questions directly and sincerely, the reporters began to think she might be telling the truth. Maybe this woman, as incredible and ridiculous as it seemed, would actually climb into her barrel and go where no man or woman had gone before. So when we are looking at summarizing a passage, we want to think about the 5W questions. Who, what, when, where, and why. We want to think, who was this passage all about? Well, it was about Annie Taylor and her manager, Frank Russell. What? Annie's preparing for her barrel ride across Niagara Falls. When? They don't tell us exactly when this was happening, but we know from other parts in the book, and we can get from context clues, even by using the illustrations, that this does not take place in modern day. This was more than about 100 years ago. Where? Niagara Falls. And why? Annie wanted to be an adventurous, and she and Frank Russell also thought they could both make money from this. So if we combine all those things into a summary, we would write 1 to 2 sentences explaining the most important parts of the passage. So if I were to summarize what we read, I might say, Annie Taylor and her manager Frank Russell were preparing in Niagara Falls for her barrel ride over the falls. She and Frank were hoping that they would make lots of money from this stunt. That's one example of summarizing. You may have an example using words that were different from mine, and that's okay. A summary is personal to each individual. We use our own words as we share the most important pieces. Thanks, 5th grade.